Hello and welcome to this short update to the Chris Chan jail saga, or as us cool kids call it, the cell saga. I'm sure you've been wondering what's been happening given that the date of his grand jury hearing was August 8th and at this point that was 2 days ago. A lot of people have been waiting on bated breath, waiting to hear what might happen to him. Well, the truth is that grand juries take a long time to decide anything, and I think a lot of people were misinformed about the true role of a grand jury. Sometimes it can take weeks, if not months, for them to actually hear a case, come to the conclusion about a case. I was never under the assumption that they would come to a decision on August 8th about the Chris case. However, it seems like they were actually a lot closer to that than we originally thought. So a lot of this information comes from the Virginia Court Case Information website, and this is now all linked on the Quickie. But what we learned on August 8th is that Chris's case was deferred to not several weeks later, but to August 9th, the next day. Basically, it looked like the grand jury was actually listening to the case about Chris. It was just going to take multiple days to go through it, as opposed to waiting several weeks to months to start it. What we also learned is that around August 5th, Chris's lawyer, David Hellberg, put forward what they called a deference for autism disorder. Now, if you look at the Quickie, it says, an autism deferred disposition refers to a Virginia law passed in 2020 which could result in a deference of further court proceedings with the defendant placed on probation terms set by the court and could also result in the charges being dismissed. This has of course led to an uproar on Twitter and probably the Kiwi Farms and other sites that Chris might get away with it. So what I've decided to do is I'm actually going to read through the law. So I'm not going to read this verbatim, but we're going to go over my very limited understanding. Keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer. In any criminal case, except a violation of, and then it links to aggravated murder. So this is not applied to aggravated murder. An act of violence, or any crime for which a deferred disposition is provided for by statute, upon a plea of guilty, or after a plea of not guilty, and the facts found by the court would justify a finding of guilt. So it doesn't matter if the defendant says that they're guilty or innocent. Once the court deems that someone's guilty, the court may, if the defendant has been diagnosed by a psychiatrist or clinical psychologist with an autism spectrum disorder, and then it defines that, and the court finds, by clear and convincing evidence, that the criminal conduct was caused by or had a direct and substantial relationship to the person's disorder and disability, they may defer further proceedings and place the accused on probation. So this is kind of the very important part, wording-wise, of the law. This whole time, since Chris has been arrested, people have been talking about the insanity plea, that maybe Chris was writing these letters about how he's Jesus because he wants to plea insane and therefore not be able to be found guilty. The problem with that is that in order to do an insanity plea, you have to show how the insanity links to the crime that was committed. So Chris thinking that he's Jesus does not prove that he doesn't understand why it's wrong what he did with Barb. And so right here it kind of says the same thing. So the criminal conduct, so the incest, or also possibly the abuse, which this might be upgraded to given the findings of the grand jury. So the criminal conduct has to be caused by Chris's autism. I don't know about you, but I think there's enough cases of incest in Virginia that have nothing to do with autism. So again, totally uneducated opinion here. I personally don't think, even given Chris's letters, even given his letters that show he is totally insane, nothing in them says like that Chris had to have sex with Barb because he's autistic. And that's what I think, reading this, you would have to prove in order to give him this deference for autism. It doesn't say that he can't go to prison because he has autism. It doesn't say that he wouldn't survive there. It doesn't say that it's cruel and unusual punishment because he's on the spectrum. It says the crime he committed is because of his autism. And that, I just don't think that that's what happened. And then, of course, the Quickie talked about how he might get away with it, not just probation. That's this line that's saying that if Chris fulfills his probation, the court may discharge the person and dismiss the proceedings against him without an adjudication of guilt. So the court does not have to say that he's innocent to not punish him. So I guess the main reason I'm making this video is both that I've seen a lot of people freaking out about how Chris is just totally going to get away with it, and I wanted to kind of quell those fears and tell those people that, no, I think a reasonable person looking at all of the evidence would come to the conclusion that Chris shouldn't get away with it. With that said, I also need to inform people who maybe haven't heard about this that Chris might get away with it. Not good. No good. A bunch of letters have also been leaked by Kenneth. I'm not going to go over those in this video. That's going to be its own separate entry. But I hope that you've enjoyed this very quick news update. I certainly have not. I just want this to be over.